Welcome everybody to our clients, our associates and all other members of the KDVI community for this final edition of the Learning Laboratory. For those of you that have not joined a Learning Lab before, it's an opportunity to learn, reflect on and discuss a little bit of material that we have felt is particularly pertinent in the current context, namely what's been going on in the world for the last 3 months, and will certainly continue to reverberate for the next several months. Just in terms of our process for today and some sort of hygiene issues around what we do in this virtual space, I just want to outline a few things that by now will obviously be quite obvious to all of you, but let's just repeat. If you could stay on mute unless you are speaking, that would be tremendously helpful to eliminate background noise. There will be a breakout session during the course of this particular edition, and that will fall at around 20 past the hour. We will ask you to report in. If you would report in unattributed when you do so, that would be helpful. Don't attribute any comments to anybody in the room to protect their privacy. We aim to finish this at around half past the hour in about 90 minutes time, so we should be running on time. There will be a chance for Q&A at the end of the session with Caroline should that be needed, and of course you can connect with her beyond the session too. So I think that covers everything. There will be some slides which you will see during the course of the session, and Alicia, as usual, if you haven't been along before, will capture many of the key elements of the session, and you'll be receiving those in the notes in the next few days. So with all of that said, I think we should get going in the interests of everybody's time. I'm absolutely delighted today to welcome to this final edition. I mean, we're going to end well here because we have Caroline Rook, who is here to talk about the issues around mental health. And Manfred de Vries, the eponymous founder of this whole thing that we're involved in, has said that coaches and consultants, and I think now to some extent managers going forward, are all going to be mental health professionals. And so we are going to have to engage with people in an entirely different way to the way we did before. Caroline is a KDVI research associate and lecturer at Henley Business School, so she comes well qualified, and her research is related to creating healthy, productive workplaces through exploring how personal growth and resilience in the work environments form part of leadership and team development. So it's a really terrific crossover of what we do and what you in organizational life experience. She's been involved in research and practice in the topics of leadership and well-being for many years, both at INSEAD and at the Lord Ashcroft International Business School and the Centre for Leadership Studies at University of Exeter. So Caroline, welcome to this final session. Thank you for being here and for giving your time to everybody who's joined. I'm now going to hand over to you and let you run this session from here on. Thanks.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you everyone for joining for this last session. I'm very happy that I'm talking to you today. Let me just quickly pull up the slides. Again, don't worry, I'm not going to give you a lecture at all. This is a learning lab after all. But what I want to do is to basically share some ideas with you in addition to that blog that we've sent out to you. So let me get going. So just to be on the same page around what mental health really means, I just want us to spend a couple of minutes to think about, well, first of all, how I define it or how you might see it, because this term is being used a lot now. And of course, mental health so far has mainly been used in the clinical world. I've pulled up here the definition from the Mental Health Foundation here in the UK, where I'm based. And they define mental health as the way we think and feel and our ability to deal with ups and downs. So it's a fairly a general, broad definition, and that's also the one that I'm working with and that I would like us to keep in mind today. So stress, for example, is part of that. And in fact, and that's the second point on the slide here, the Health and Safety Executive, again in the UK, is basically collecting data in terms of work-related illness cases for stress, depression, anxiety together. As you can see, in the UK, 57% of all work-related illness cases are due to, if we use this definition, mental health, and here in particular stress, depression, or anxiety, which is a fairly high number if we think about it. Their research, so the Health and Safety Executive in the UK, their research has also found that stress in the workplace plays a significant role in either aggravating or actually developing depression, anxiety in the workplace. So it's very important that we look after people's mental health, in particular, think about how we can minimize stress or help people to cope with it. And just another figure here, 1 in 6.8 people, again in the UK, experience mental health problems in the workplace. And again, these are the numbers from the pre-pandemic world, which is already, I think, these are fairly shocking numbers, we could say, and they will definitely be rising if we think about what implications social isolations, lockdown, or also home working have on mental health. You might have read that in all of these different blogs and information that we get now, that particularly when people have to socially isolate for a long time, they experience, even years after, higher levels of depression, and in fact some even experience post-traumatic stress disorder. So for sure we will come across mental health issues in the workplace in future. So let me just come to the digital communication technology then. So again, our use of our phones, laptops, tablets, and the apps and ways of interacting that come with these. Of course, working from home, that a lot of us have to do now, also means that work-life boundaries are blurred. And they have been blurred for many, many years, because we have our phones or laptops by our side, even when we're at home. So that's why it's quite difficult to switch off, to control ourselves, not to read that other email or respond at midnight. So that's a key issue that research has established. And I just want to share a few more with you before we go into the breakout sessions, where I want to explore together with you actually what your experiences are around the challenges of working with digital communication technology and what we can do about it. So the next one is really the changing technology expertise. Maybe some of you have experienced this now. Constantly we have these new collaboration platforms coming up. First is Zoom, then it's Microsoft Teams, maybe then it's also Slack. So having to keep up and being able to work with these different technologies has also been found to, well, stress us out every now and then. Overexposure of information is particularly important, well, if you're thinking about the situation we are now in. So on the one hand, you have overexposure of information because it's much, much easier, again, to communicate with each other. It's easier to fire out an email with a new report. And of course, now with what's going on in our private life, so to speak, we also have just an onslaught of information really that we are being bombarded with. So as I already mentioned, work has become more fast-paced and we are always on because of the technology that we're using. And that's actually a key body of research that has started a while ago. These technologies create a constant distraction, particularly when we're working. So one study, for example, found that we're apparently on average accessing our phones, so looking at them, 85 times per day. Now, I thought that's a bit ridiculous, 85 times. And there are even other studies that claim that we do it more than 120 times. So I checked my own phone, and I'm trying not to use it very much at the moment. And I checked my phone yesterday 67 times. And that's me trying to keep my use of the phone down. Just, yeah. Of course, that has also been researched a lot, and I think we've all been probably talking about this, our sense of fear of missing out, FOMO, particularly in terms of our use of social media, creates a lot of stress, first of all, through the distraction that it creates when we're trying to work or actually enjoy being together with our family at the dinner table. On the other hand, there's been a lot of research, particularly in relation to young adults, that our social comparison with others, what they're posting online about their great life and their great achievements, really creates serious mental health issues such as anxiety and depression. Another one I want to finish off with here, again, quite a significant body of research has shown that the use of our phones and tablets or even computers before we go to sleep really has an effect on how well we sleep. So just that blue light creates a reduction in the melatonin levels, which means that it's harder for us to fall asleep and actually to stay asleep. So what does that mean in terms of us being able to work, particularly in the home setting? Actually, we do feel, according to some research, much more alone than if we were not so hyper connected. So even though we're connected through all of these platforms, there seems to be a sense of loneliness because the way we're interacting online is not the same as we're interacting face to face. Or indeed, as I've mentioned, we might only be showing the bright side of our life rather than share our sorrows. Particularly if we have people who are solely working from home and others in their organization are working at the office, these people tend to feel much more lonely because what we found is that when we connect online, quite often we forget to check in with each other. We go straight to the task. And that's why, again, this feeling of loneliness. So overall, that also means going straight to the task is that our interpersonal relationships are not as effective. And because of the distraction, again, there is research on this. We have, lower attention, maybe also shorter attention span, and our task performance is much lower than it used to be when we didn't use technology so much. And of course, if we go more to the clinical side of mental health, some of our behavior in terms of how we engage with the technology, such as our phone, social media, and so forth, or checking our email, can turn into compulsive behavior, even addiction. Again, significant body of research with younger adults, but also in the workplace now. So these are just some basically key points for you, in addition to the blog, to think about what the challenges of working with digital communication technology really are. I want to stop here for a moment. I'm conscious that I've been bombarding you with information, as we said, the digital technology does. Just quickly for 30 seconds, I would like you to think about, and don't think about it for too long, just quickly, how many hours per day do you think you spend on digital communication technology? So your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And that's not just for work, that's if you just think about your day, how many hours? I'll just give you a couple of seconds. If you note it down, we'll make a mental note, that's fine. Okay, so don't think about it too much. And again, maybe in your discussions, you can compare whether you have similar numbers there. And I would also invite you, if your phone has that feature or your other devices, to actually double check after the call whether you were spot on, or like me, who was maybe a little bit, not very honest with myself, or not very reflective how much I use my phone. And now also thinking about how much time you spend on your phone, with your tablet, your computer. Now in regards to work, what do you find most challenging when it comes to working with these technologies? So thinking about, you have to maybe be creative at work, you want to get your work done in the set time you set yourself. What do you find most challenging? Again, what comes to mind first? Just make a note. Okay, so I'll move on here. And I just want to show you one more slide, which basically tries to summarize what I just talked about. So this area of our engagement, the way we work with digital communication technology, is in the area of academia and research. Is called technostress. And that's quite, you can see that from the definition here. So technostress being a modern disease caused by our inability to cope with technologies in a healthy manner. This research has been around for quite some time, as you can see here. And again, researchers believe that technostress has these multiple facets, these 5 facets that you can see here. And they're a nice summary of all of the factors that I just mentioned. So the overload, the overload of information, the invasion, so the invasion of work into the private life, for example, or you're trying to have a quiet moment and your phone goes off, or your computer shows notifications that emails are coming in. The complexity, as I said, trying to be able to work with new platforms and so forth, trying to create an online presence. How do you do that? It's constantly changing. In insecurity, again, not knowing, am I using this technology appropriately, but also to what extent am I exposing myself online, and uncertainty, also in regards to, we haven't talked about that too much, that people might fear that they're losing their jobs to technology. So that's affecting some people, but not necessarily everyone. So to kind of open up our minds a little bit, to go a little bit deeper in our discussions, I want to share a finding with you from a piece of research that I have done with colleagues at KDVI and INSEAD. And we looked at this technostress of people with different personality profiles. And we found that people with high levels of conscientiousness, so people are very organized, like to control things, and people with high levels of extroversion, so people are very outgoing, recharge their batteries by socializing with others, they experience more technostress. So they experience more stress through having to use or using technology. I'm not going to share with you why I think that is the case. I just want to leave you with this finding and open up the group discussion. And for you to think about how to create a more healthy and productive life by us using the digital communication technology, I would like you to first think about what makes it so challenging for us to work with our devices in a healthy manner. So again, you can use the reflection that I asked you to do just a moment ago. Of course, I shared some of the challenges that research has established. And again, to maybe go a little bit deeper, maybe to kind of think below the surface a little bit. What is really going on? Why do I have to check my phone 67 times per day? Where does personality come in? Yeah, so why do you think these people with high levels of conscientiousness and extroversion, why do they suffer much, much more from this technostress? So maybe spend 10 minutes just trying to reflect on the challenges, and then spend 20 minutes to come up with suggestions on how to create a healthy and productive working life for us. When we have to use digital communication technology, particularly working from home. And I'm sure you'll come up with lots of different ideas, but I would like you to report back with one key idea which we then will all share together when we get back in 30 minutes time after the group discussions. Hey, welcome back everyone. I hope you had some productive discussions and some interesting ideas to share with us. Just to remind everyone again, I'm sure you've come up with several ideas on how we can create a healthy and productive work environment for all of us whilst using digital communication technology. But what I would like you to do is just to share one key idea with the whole group. And if you have taken notes and you're happy that they're being shared with everyone, do send them to us after. So I think we'll start with group one and then continue all the way through.
So group one is the group with Bettina, Carolyn, Diana, Aline, and Françoise.
So we didn't discuss who will present, so I'll start. I'll just go ahead of that. So we had a super interesting discussion on how we have been going through this and experiencing situations. And so the main idea that came out at the end was gaining more awareness and be prepared. So it's really this point of we are noticing in this period of time that those who have been prepared are better off, and we are noticing that we are more aware of things than before. So finding a way to connect that and to integrate that in our own behavior is certainly something that we saw as helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much also to keeping one idea. That's great. Thank you.
So in breakout 2, we have Anna, Cynthia, Maria, Mark, and Michael.
Who would like, yeah, go on.
Me or someone else? Okay. So, you know, we had also very, very, very good discussions. It started a lot around boundaries and limits. And then Mark said that maybe we should rename boundaries to balance. So at the end, we had self-awareness, which is close to the previous group awareness. So self-awareness, balance, and commitment to ourselves that we do something, and really based on what we discover, what we need, self-awareness, we do it really, and then achieve a balance.
Yep, that's great. Thank you.
So in group 3, we have Guy, Pearl, Sigrid, and Jacini.
And I'm presenting. Great discussion. We love the material, and we had a lot of things that we said, but the common factor was you have to stay physical. You have to move. You have to schedule to have those weekends to go out, connect to nature. One of us had the idea that you can dance. You can put the music, and if you're coaching, take a break, do an exercise, move, because we're sitting too long. And then that'll make you more connected with the coachee, because we have to be strong for those coachees. So, and the physical, walk while swimming, move, and then respect that weekend for doing that physical, for exercising, for doing housework, and trying to create not something special for the weekend to cut with physical. So and we need that, the eating well, the body, the actual body, so your mental will stay. So that was like our main idea, that we were all working around that, and it'll lower stress. We had insecurity, we had the need for mindfulness, but connecting to that physical part, not forgetting activity.
That's great.
Sleep better, and everything that emanates around that need for physical will help us, because this is going to be long. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Group 4, we've got Carlos, Christelle, Jean, and Yuki.
And I'll
One of you.
yeah, I'll speak up. So we have one idea, but we have two, which means one for self and one if you lead teams. So the one for self is basically we keep very much an awareness that the digital ways of working have to adapt to our life and not the other way around. And a good example that if I work on Sunday, it's okay if I had to take Tuesday afternoon to do something with my family. This is a choice that I make. And that was my life. So I'm adapting to my life and not the other way around. And then the other idea we had if you are managing teams was to communicate your expectations. We shared about an email received where somebody basically had put, in respect to the digital charter, if I send emails on evenings and weekends, I do not expect an immediate answer. So it is my responsibility to send on weekends, but I do not. So communicate your expectations to make sure your teams are not thinking that you want them to be always on and things like that. And that goes on also to the role of the leaders. We had an extensive discussion there that if you have somebody who's behaving a certain way, they probably expect you to behave this way. But if you communicate your expectations, then it's clear for the team. So one for self and one for the team lead.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
Group 5 has Avani, Constance, Flores, Selena, and Victor.
Who would like to feedback to just with one idea, or maybe even a key point in your discussion?
I will do it. I will do it. I will volunteer because we did not select a volunteer.
Thank you, Constance. Thanks.
So we discussed a lot about our inner theaters because we thought this was what was important to create the stress. And we also discussed the idea of belonging, that it is a great need everybody has. So technology, it creates a sort of illusion that we belong in certain groups with certain people. And one of our group spoke about how he has this longing to be seen and be needed. So he's looking at his cell phone, as we all do, hoping that somebody will care for us and will send us a message of care. And in many cases, another person said, the phone pings and you go and something completely unimportant, nobody is really watching me. So another person said, yes, but what would be interesting then is to set boundaries. Very important to create boundaries because this need of belonging is fundamental. But technology creates the illusion that we belong somewhere. Sometimes there is something, but basically it is virtual, so it's a real illusion.
Okay.
But where do I set the boundaries? How do I stop looking at the phone? Don't put the phone on the side table of your bed and look at it even during the night. Don't do that. Create your boundaries and then give more time to the real world, to the connection with family, with friends. What Sigrid said before, you go out for a walk, you be in nature, so you give attention to the real world.
Yeah, to the actual belonging. Yeah, okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And finally, we have group 6 with Alex, Martin, and Mauricio.
Yeah. And this is Alex. I can take the lead on this one. So we are a very nice group. I mean, one person in Paris, one person in Barcelona. I'm actually in Casablanca, Morocco. We all have a finance background. So we are people that are by nature, in terms of thinking how we grew up, very organized in our way, logic. Yeah. So one of our main thoughts coming out of this would be, okay, we have this pandemic situation, it changes the world. What stays important is that you're very disciplined in how you schedule your time, how you manage your time, how you're organized. Because 2 out of 3 of us are busy in the coaching sector, which means that we have a lot of online interaction. So the idea is that in order to establish yourself as part of that community, if you will, of ever more growing online people and experts, it remains important to stay focused and to find strategies on how to find new clients and and continue, doing what you do. Because if you stop doing what you do online, your presence as a person in society goes to zero, right?
Yeah.
So that was one idea. The other one was also that we need to adapt. So we're in the process now in this lockdown of trying to find strategies on how to adapt to this new situation. And for that, we need interaction. For that, we need workshops like this, interaction with people. Say, okay, how are you coping? What are you doing? And there's a lot of ideas, good ideas that come out of this workshop. So, so being conscious of the fact that you're not living in the same type of reality as before, you need to adapt somehow, is a strong idea that we had. And last but not least, I think we all agree that we try to stay Zen. So meditation, just to empty the mind, not to worry about certain things, and find peace in your head and in your heart.
Okay. Yeah.
Voilà.
Great. That sounds great. Thank you so much for sharing in a very concise manner. Thanks. Thank you. So we have 25 minutes left. Let me just summarize what you all brought to the bigger group now, and if I may, I'll also share some of the thoughts I had based on this research I have done on techno stress. So you were talking about just being prepared and being disciplined, also how we use how we engage with digital technology, and several of you mentioned that the sense of balance, or being committed to find a balance of our, if you want to call it that, online and offline life seems quite important, particularly also with that idea of staying physical, to also balance what parts of us, of our body, we are constantly exerting. So sitting down, just working with the mind constantly is not healthy, and of course just the sitting in itself will create physical issues later. Well, what I thought was also really interesting, that we probably should all think about how do we ourselves deal with digital communication technology. What can we do to help ourselves to be healthy and productive? But at the same time, particularly if you're managers or coaches helping others or working with others, what are we doing to help them manage technology in a healthy manner, or help them to be productive? So you were talking about setting expectations, but maybe also setting a good example might be another one. So not to send that email at midnight, but all of us have different ways of working. I think, again, the self-awareness, how we work and why we work in the way we do, is important. And of course, acknowledging that this email might arrive at midnight because this person is in a completely different time zone. It doesn't mean you have to respond. That need for belonging, I think, is a key one, particularly now that many of us have to socially isolate. But of course, that we should also, again, try and balance that with belonging to real people, the non-digital personas that we have. And again, this might be connected also with this downtime that we've been talking about so much. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes that I'm kind of facing outward here. This need for belonging that you discussed, I think also connected with one of the last points that was raised around, if you don't exist online, or if you're not active online, you might feel left out, or you might feel you don't actually exist because we all have to work in this space now so much. So again, really thinking about what sort of balance and discipline, that word was being used, can you create for yourself and for others to make the technology work for you? And again, I thought that was an interesting point, rather than you adapting to the technology. And that might be in the way we're using it, but also when we're using it. particular, not necessarily talking about work-life balance, but work-life integration, if we like. So let me share a slide again with you. I promise it's my last slide, just to show you some of the ideas that have come out of the research that I've been doing on this. So again, so how do we create a healthy and productive working life, having all of these technologies around? So I would really like us to think a little bit deeper. So we talked about the inner theater, we talked about self-awareness, and I think that might be on an individual level, but also organizational level. I think we need to think about what sort of working cultures we find ourselves in. And again, I'm saying individual versus organizational. So there might be still organizations that think that you're only really productive, or you're only really working if you are in a meeting, or if you're at your desk. And if that's not happening, then you can't really trust that your people are doing anything. So being busy is seen, being there, doing something is seen as being productive, versus us really thinking about whether being busy actually means that you're creating something, that you are productive. And us maybe thinking about that it's not necessarily just about the input, the amount of hours, let's say, but the output. So does it really matter now that we can work whenever we want, wherever we work, when we connect? Can we work maybe on a Sunday and then take a Monday off, just to give a very simplistic example here? So I think that's a point for us to think about. Another one is, and I just mentioned input versus output, is to also think about, well, when are we actually working? So it's me staring out of the window maybe, or me going for a walk, me getting physical, like you called it earlier. Is that not working? And this might, is it really not working? And this might come from my profession, so my personal thoughts on this. I would argue that me going for a walk is crucial for me to be productive. This is part of my work. If I'm not doing that, I know that the papers that I might have to write, or the lectures that I have to prepare, won't be as good, because I don't have the space to think, the space to be creative, let's say. So, and particularly because we are in front of screens constantly now, really thinking about how can we move away from that, create this creative downtime, or this doing nothing, in order to get particularly creative work done. Because as I mentioned earlier, being in front of a screen, because of all of these notifications and distractions, is much more likely to really impair our ability to be productive or creative. And another piece is around our meeting culture, I guess. And this might not just be true for how we engage digitally with one another, but also how we generally work. So we mentioned being constantly in meetings. So is this constant, I call it here collaboration, so this constant being on, having to talk to people, is that really productive? Or should we think about, I call it strategic collaboration here? So really connecting when we really need to, and also thinking, how do we need to connect? So does it always have to be a face-to-face virtual call? What are other ways of connecting with one another? Just thinking about that many of us now spend maybe 5 to 8 hours in front of the screen every day in meetings. How meaningful is this connection then? Okay, so just again, these are just some thoughts to leave you with. And you mentioned this as well. So you talked about self-awareness, discipline, and commitment. And again, maybe also a fairly personal piece here. So to what extent do we also use this technology to actually not do the work that's really difficult sometimes? Yeah, so I quite often find myself in a situation where I think, gosh, you know, this is really hard. And I might actually not say this out loud, or might not actually consciously think about it, but I might actually say, I should check my email. I'm sure there's something really important and someone really needs to reach me. And again, really thinking about how do we use all of these different platforms through which we are connected. So email is a great example, first of all, for distraction, right? So whenever we hear this ping, one of the groups mentioned that, actually what happens is that our endorphin levels go up, because there might be something really exciting in this email, an exciting opportunity or whatever it might be. So we are very tempted each time to open that email. At the same time, of course, it's also fairly easy for us to answer an email, for example. So the sense of achievement is there straight away. So we're constantly being active, and that comes back to that very first point on that slide here. So we are being busy, so we feel good about ourselves, and we are too busy to get the real work done. And quite often I hear also colleagues complain that say, you know, I can't actually get any research done because I'm too busy with everything else. And here I would say, well, to what extent are we really self-aware here and really control our, what I call here, active procrastination. So I think I'm going to leave it here. And we still have a little bit of time left. Are there any questions maybe, or any thoughts that you want to share, or any questions for me, as I said, maybe for 5 minutes or so before Graham closes the session? And I'll stop sharing this here. Anything that's on anyone's mind that wasn't shared maybe in the debrief, but you think would be really useful to share with everyone else, or anything else that you think you would like to ask me about the research that has been done on this?
Caroline, maybe I could lead with a question while people are
sure.
thinking.
Yeah, of course.
We could toss something around for a few moments. So, and I'd like to share an anecdote. So I was working with a group about a week ago, works for a finance corporation, and everybody in the group was experiencing an extreme level of stress. This level of stress was already pretty high before the crisis, but had gone up exponentially since. And what appeared to be happening in the organization was that, and it touches on a number of things that have just been said here, that the managers had essentially eliminated the boundaries between what they considered was reasonable work and a working experience for their direct reports, to the extent that, and I'll give you one example, somebody said that they had been contacted on this particular Saturday by their manager 8 times by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, this was a young guy with a couple of young children, and it led, and he said, well, I don't really understand how I'm going to manage this, because he's given me now a lot of work to do, which I then have to complete on Sunday, the expectation being that I will deliver it on Monday, and then my working week begins. He said, and for the last 5 weeks, I've literally been working 7 days a week. Now, maybe I can stop there. I mean, that's one case of someone who is exceptionally stressed and actually was left with a very large question mark. And I'm wondering if you have any experience of such extreme situations and how people might begin to think about managing those situations healthily. So, because my suspicion is this is a person who, left alone, will head for burnout very quickly. Yeah. He felt helpless.
Yeah. Well, my first question there would be, Graham, did his manager say you need to get it done by Sunday, or you know, on Monday you need to have all of this done, or is this something he thinks is the expectation? And again, I think what I've seen where I think it works quite well if there's a clear communication also in the email to say, look, this is on my mind right now. I'm sending it to you now. This is when I need a response by. Of course, there are also cultures, organizations, teams where there's an expectation to be on 24/7. And that's a much more difficult environment to navigate, and particularly if you have a very demanding family life. And I think, again, in my experience, it can only go two ways. As you said, Graham, this person is just trying to manically perform.
Yeah.
And actually what they are creating or is not the best that they can, because first of all, they don't have any time to unwind, to recharge. And second of all, they have to do this work alongside all of the other commitments that they have. So they are heading for burnout if nothing is being done. And the second way is for this person, if they think they can, if they want to, to have a conversation with their manager. But again, it would be in the interest of that manager to take a look at his or her team and think about, well, where's the team at? Are they performing at their peak performance? Do they seem a lot more tired than usual? Because at the end of the day, it will cost that manager quite a bit if just one team member is burning out, if not all of them, if that's the way he or she is behaving with all of them.
Well, the sustainability factor is definitely a question mark. And I think I really liked your first response, which was the mindset. You know, is this about me or is this about the organization? And that self-awareness thing that was mentioned by someone in the group is important here, which is, you know, so what are the real expectations and which part of this is me actually just responding or trying to be a good boy or a good girl? So I think it's super important to raise that. I just add one thing before the group comes in, which is I spoke to one organization who were trying very hard to implement what's known as the RACI model, which many people will be familiar with, in order to try to create some structure around how things are done, namely who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed. And if you just do that sort of religiously, it was helping people to break tasks and projects up so that they were more evenly distributed. Let's open it back up to this crowd of people.
Yes, yeah.
So looking at the last slide you shared, Caroline, one question that constantly came up to me was, what are the beliefs people have around work? And how can they adjust these beliefs when they're with themselves and not with their team? So in the past, it has been often easy to say, well, this is the work, I have to do so many square foot, and then it's done. But with knowledge work, how do we, what are the beliefs we need to create about what is productive knowledge work?
Yes, absolutely. And I've started a project thinking about these knowledge workers, right? So how can a leader, how can a manager create the right culture for these well, we call them in our research team hypermobile knowledge workers who are traveling, are working while they're traveling, who are working in co-working spaces, you know, in cafes and so forth, where you don't actually have that many touch points necessarily with the whole team, or let alone with the manager. And yes, how can you, as a manager of someone like this or a team like this, as you said, François, create the right belief system so that they're also not almost self-exploiting themselves? Or as you said, if the expectations are not quite clear, they might be performing towards something that's not really the case and are heading towards burnout because of that. Or because they themselves are not very self-aware or self-disciplined and have kind of workaholic tendencies, possibly, who knows, and heading to burnout because of that. Yeah. But I think that there's a lot of work to be done. Again, we are kind of really, I think, like with many other things, this situation now is really highlighting these issues that we have been having anyway. Yeah.
So maybe a comment from my end is I think we didn't get any better, or managers who were not good are still not good, but they're online not good. We had our own challenges, and the challenges are still there. Myself, for me, saying no is always a challenge. Now I have a lot more requests. So my challenge is, how do I say no virtually, and how do I improve myself? But it's an old challenge I had. And for me, there's something about not only expecting in the other for them to be better, but also how do I set my own boundaries? How do I get better of whatever is annoying me in the new setup? And how do we keep the dialogue open? For me, it's about always trying to create the space to talk about it and to be transparent as much as we can. And I think that could be helpful for both management and also ourselves as support or employees to create new contracts, because that's really challenging us. It's a completely new setup. So I don't think we have the answers. I think it's about experimenting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is the right time to experiment, because we now have to shift, rather than translating what we've done in the physical world of work, now just shift it one-to-one to the online world of work. So I absolutely agree with you. It is challenging for everyone, but kind of thinking about these challenges, why is it challenging for us, right? And maybe also what has not worked so well before, and what possibilities do we have now? Just kind of stepping back a little and saying, how can we kind of change the work we all engage with each other for us to actually be more productive, to actually see this as an opportunity, rather than a challenge. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm kind of conscious in a psychoanalytic context, when people start bending boundaries, there's always something that's worth exploring. And I'm thinking here, we've got all sorts of things about boundaries changing, which sounds like a golden opportunity to actually explore what's going on in organizations. But that needs a sort of creative process that says, what's this about, rather than an accusatory one that says you're getting it wrong. But this might give us a golden opportunity to explore how we're functioning in organizations and possibly find a more productive way of doing it.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, we really kind of digging deep, if I may say so, in terms of the cultures that we have created in our teams or in organizations, and what we might be able to do now to shift more towards organizations that support individuals, support teams to be healthy. Again, the assumption being, well, it's not just an assumption, that if people are healthy and maybe also happy, that they might be more productive. Yeah, and also, of course, the other way around. If we can be productive, then we will create individuals who feel well and who are also much more engaged. And again, we're all, again, across the world, organizations have very low engagement levels, which is a real issue. Yeah.
Yeah, something comes to my mind on implementing all that we're saying. I mean, changing the culture, getting the people get it, that it's not by controlling more and intervening more in the jobs of the others that they will be more efficient, but on the contrary, they will lose attention and focus on what they're doing. One thing that I experience is working pretty well is incentivize the people to go and get feedback. Like, okay, so you've been managing your team for X weeks online. So how does that work for them? And going from that fantasy of how they believe it works for them, which usually is it's not the first thing. They usually answer how it works for themselves. No, but how does that work for the people that you're working with? And then go and have them move to the real world and ask for, how has it been working for you, actually? And if doing that massively really helps the people get a very valuable information. I mean, it's after all, we're humans, and we're managing our own stress. So the person who did that, who sent 8 emails on a Sunday afternoon, was actually managing their own stress. And it was the best way for them to do that. So it's legitimate that they wanted to do that. What they probably discounted is the effect on the others. So they probably thought that maybe the others had the same kind of stress, which is maybe my family is heavily on church and Sunday lunch, and Monday morning I have a lot of things to do, and I need to think. So it's the best time in the week for me to think, and I want to be valuable to my collaborators. So I want to do sensible emails, and it's the Sunday afternoon that I do sensible emails. Okay, so there's maybe there, as we. It's an expression from Barry Oshry on the organization workshop. He says, people on the top are sending gold through a tube, and at the end, it's received as quite brown and quite smelly.
Okay, but I think the idea is great. Why don't we all do that when we get back to work, to think about how are we, how do we think we're doing in terms of managing others, and invite some feedback. I think that might be a great next step, one of them from our collective reflection today. I'll hand over to Graham, because we're out of time now. But I also, from my side, just want to say thank you very much for these really great insights, and really sharing also some of your personal experiences and reflections with everyone. Thank you.
Caroline, thank you to you for a great session. It was a fantastic session to close on, and so highly relevant, so important for all of us in the world as employees, as coaches, consultants, managers, whoever. So thank you for sharing your wisdom around that. Thank you again to KDVI for giving us the space. It's a wonderful community. There's lots of great input in every session. I always learn tons. I hope you did too, and had an opportunity to think a few things through. It always leaves me marked and resonates very strongly. Thanks to Oriane for allowing us the space to actually create all of this in the first place several months ago. This is the last of these. There is a little bit of a pipeline of ideas of what we might do in the future. You never know, we may be back, but hopefully there won't be a second wave of this pandemic, and we'll all be way too busy to do stuff like this. But maybe we should create space like this once in a while, because it's so valuable and so interesting. And so I wish you all the very best.
Wait. I want to say a comment.
Over to you.
I just wanted to say quickly, I don't know what the learning labs have meant for all of you. But for me, it's been a space to explore the experiences and the new realities caused by the current circumstances. And it's been a place to meet many people, and to feel connected, and to feel that the work we do at KDVI holds meaning to more than just me and Alicia and, the individuals within the organization, that it reverberates outside. And I'm hugely grateful to Claire, Graham, Alicia, all the contributors, to Joe, who has helped organize it, for the time that has been put in, because it's taken quite some time. And as Graham said, we will pause now and consider whether we will and how we will continue to run the learning labs. I do think that there is a space to continue to do this, maybe on a less intense way, but to do it from time to time, just to remember to reconnect. And that we will also, this has spawned a whole bunch of ideas for us around, for instance, leadership and culture in a virtual space, or around stress and well-being, and how one can measure that and understand it, and provide guidance to leaders. And so we'll be developing other types of content that we can put forward to you in the future. So again, a big thank you to Claire and Graham and Alicia and all the contributors. Thank you, Caroline, for today.
Thank you.